very interested, and this is a thing that I'm really interested in, is the research you're doing around the immune system. And I'm very interested in that as well, because I've got my own little theories about, because I hear so much about autopsies being done on people, and they find and the plaques and tangles, and they never had any symptoms.
That's right.
Yeah, I then started looking on Google and everything, and then realising that the immune system could be producing these things to actually combat the disease, and maybe it worked in the people that didn't have symptoms. So I'm very keen to hear on your side of what you're doing as regards to the immune system.
Well, the immune system is a very important part of any neurodegenerative disease, because the brain is thought to be privileged in its immunity. So it has a barrier that means that the immune system works very differently in the brain to how it works in every other organ. And that's because if you have things that your circulating blood cells need to be able to combat viruses, infectious particles. They need to get to them really quite quickly, and they need to like hit them hard and get rid of them. Yes. But if you had that in the brain and got rid of your brain cells by accident, like a collateral damage, it would be very problematic. So there's a barrier. There's actually a barrier so that the normal immune cells can't just go in and help themselves get disoriented and do that collateral damage. So the brain has this immunity difference to other organs. Now the interesting thing is though that to get rid of any material in the brain, you use the immune system. So every degenerative disease, if you're actually losing brain cells, you've actually do it by the cleanup guys are the immune cells in your brain. So that the immune cells within the brain perform an extremely important function to keep the brain clean of debris and tissue damage. So it's a very important, in fact, it would be terrible if we didn't have them. So we know that the immune cells have to be involved in every degenerative disease, because to get rid of tissue, you use that system. So the concept is, and people still don't know, is whether or not activation of the immune system is early. If you do it too early or something goes awry, it may actually contribute to increased degeneration, or whether or not it can be protective. So at the moment the jury's still out, and so people are actually looking at that area really carefully. And as you might imagine, the immune system can do both. And so whenever we're measuring things or looking at things, there's always a good immune system that's helping get dampen things down, because that's how you use it. You get rid of infection, get rid of terrible things. Or there's an immune system in the brain that is sort of like your garbage disposal system. So it is an important area to look at. So the areas we've been looking at, whether or not, because we know that degeneration in the brain, you get rid of the tissue by the immune system. So we know that if we can measure in the periphery, it goes into the periphery because it doesn't stay in your brain. If we can measure things in the periphery, we might be able to see fragments of things that were in the brain. So we can potentially use them as biomarkers to understand what is the protein that was going wrong, how bad the cell loss might be, and all of those issues to give us biological markers, because we can't look in the brain to that cellular level. In addition, we can then look for things that would be in patients or people that have clinical phenotypes that are slower versus faster, whether or not there's anything in the immune system that is helpful for people who get a slower course and detrimental for people who have a fast course, because we can look at those things. The immune system is something that is very well documented because infectious and infectious diseases. So there's a lot of tools we can use that are actually used broadly in other circumstances.